I remember when I first watched this movie, or at least during some of the time that I first, because I can't exactly remember the first time I sat down and watched it. I believe Dracula was actually the first black and white horror film I ever watched and enjoyed. I remember my uncle, he helped me understand these movies a lot better, because as a child in the 80s, black and white was like, oh my god, that's like ancient, oh no, we can't watch that. He sat me down and he basically showed me, like, hey, like, this is, if it wasn't for these movies, you wouldn't have Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, and all these films inspired a lot of the creators that we have now, and in the 80s and 90s. I'm sorry, I'm talking about this right now while this scene's going on, because I don't really have much to say about this scene. It's just basically they're looking to Dr. Waldman for answers as to why Henry's acting the way he is, and he's also basically talking about that, like how he changed as a result of his experiments, and how he went on his own because he would not go along with what he wanted. Here we go. The cliched, what is now cliched, scene of a castle with the rain and the wind and the nighttime. And just look at this picture right here. I don't have much to say about the production design on here. I don't know much about the production design. I do know that a lot of this lab equipment was used again in Young Frankenstein, directed by Mel Brooks for 20th Century Fox, which I thought was interesting because, I always just thought it was interesting to see that, like in the 70s they would still use equipment made in the 30s. Now, what I will say about the monster is that I'm not gonna say who plays him. I mean, I'm sure anybody that watches knows who plays him, and you can even go on the internet or whatever and figure it out if you don't know. But the original cast member was Bela Lugosi, and it even got to the point where there was a poster of Bela Lugosi as the monster, saying "Sorry, Bela Lugosi." And I think this is also what made James Whale say the monster played by question mark, because they didn't want to get their hopes up on this one player and then cancel him out, but Bela Lugosi decided to quit production because the makeup effects by Jack Pierce at the time, he wasn't liking it, and I'm guessing he was nervous that this would be the final makeup test and he would have to go through this. He looked like the Golem basically, and it ended up being different, but that's just basically the reason he left, and also because he was somewhat revered as like a hero or something in Hungarian, where he came from, for playing Dracula. He also played Dracula in the 1920s play, but I'm not even going to get into that until I do a commentary for the Dracula film. But what we're about to start seeing, though, are the electrical special effects done for the film, which was done by Kenneth Strickfaden. He also doubles during the birth scene, where you see Frankenstein's arm, or rather the Frankenstein monster's arm, going up, because he's actually not named Frankenstein. He's named Frankenstein's monster, or the creature. Anything but a name. And I think actually, like right now, that's Kenneth, because you can tell from the different shade of skin color, as opposed to the guy who plays. I almost slipped there. You can tell how fake that hunchback is, but still great. Yeah, look at this. I wonder if this was meant to ever be actually a place where somebody lived. Like, I mean, in the story, or if this was made as a laboratory, because like it's just so dank and depressing, but it's also beautiful at the same time. I love how he's like over there complaining about the knocking in the door. Like he can't stand up to Dr. Frankenstein, but he can stand up to himself. So that must be some one hell of a storm. I love the way he says it. You must be alone now. Like he emphasizes the O's. So basically, there was no reason for Fritz to go down there and say, "Don't come in," because he came down anyways to tell him not to come in, and then let them in anyways. You notice how they're in like this really downpour, windy rain, and yet they're not wet at all? I mean, yeah, they have umbrellas, but they would still get wet from the way the wind's blowing the rain. I mean, like it's not an important feature though. Yeah, this was one of the scenes that was featured in Weird Science, as they decide to meet the girl. Crazy am I? I'll show you whether I'm crazy or not. Oh, we get a single shot of each of them nodding yes, and signifying they all want to come in. I mean, yeah. Well, not much going on in this scene. I mean, this is the precursor to the quote-unquote birth scene for the Frankenstein's monster. Excuse me if you heard that. I kind of burped. Now watch, he just got done yelling at Victor, and look how he is with Elizabeth. It's like we get a moment of seeing the normal Henry, as and then he's right back to being the mad scientist. I always thought that was kind of funny. I mean, obviously, women can do that to a man, or at least the love of a woman. And as the film goes on, I'll make note of any kind of scenes that are put in that were censored. Because I'm not sure if it was censored originally, but I know like around the 1940s or 50s, they made some severe cuts because at that time there was no MPAA to say that this was wrong or kids shouldn't go see this or anything like that. So they just made the cuts. They didn't, this is basically not rated or unrated, but it's not unrated in terms of like enormous splatter. It's unrated because there's nothing in the film that can really be construed as bad for kids. At least not with how numbing violence is nowadays for kids because of what we see on a everyday basis on the news and on regular TV and movies. I did forget to mention that the screenplay for this film was written by Francis Edward Farag, Garrett Forty, and contributed a little bit by Robert Foley and John Russell. And they wrote the screenplay based off the adapted John Boldestein writing. Now see how the skin color is? Just take a look at that skin color, then later on watch how the skin color looks. This is why I think like this is Kenneth before the actual actor who plays the monster, is there. Here we go. This is kind of the. I think I would say this is probably the climax of like maybe one of the first act. Now usually in film there's like 3 or 4 acts. The first act is usually a setup and the start of it. The second act is everything going on, and then the third act is the consequences or the resolution of what's gone on. Here we go. We're going up. See, back then, that must have been like futuristic science right there. All that. Nowadays, it's like you do that just to toast a bagel. No. You get more of the shining lights. These actors, I haven't really seen these actors in anything else except Universal horror films. I don't know, it's not, not something very important, but now here we go. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Now here we're about to have not a cut. This is actually the unedited version. You're gonna hear it in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, when he says, "In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God." I guess back then it was. I mean, even nowadays, people are freaking so damn sensitive when it comes to religion. That in the original cut, it was, oh, you know what? I'll get right back to that. This is Frederic as Baron Frankenstein, basically Henry's father. He kind of just disappears by the end of the film, and we never see him again. Even though the second film takes place right afterwards, we don't see him anymore. So he's not really a big character, But anyways, like I was saying, I guess people were like extremely sensitive back then that he would consider himself God for actually bringing life to a lifeless body. So for years until like around 1986, that was one of the cuts that were made. We would see a splice cut, and then a thunderclap basically would happen, and it wasn't until around 1986 that that we got the regular thing back. Here we have Lionel Belmore as Herr Vogel, the Burgomaster. He's also not a big character. I just thought I mentioned him because he is one of the people that goes for the lynch mob at the end of the film. He's the Burgomaster. I guess the Burgomaster is like the commissioner. Yeah, this feels like another scene that was just kind of thrown in there for good measure, just to kind of fill in time slot, because this movie is only about 75 minutes long.
Good day, Herr Fritz. Good day, Herr Vogel.